So let's go ahead and take a look at an example where we use linear relationships and we see them in a verbal description, in an equation, in a table, and a graph. So let's go ahead and, just like with any problem, we're going to start off by writing rubies. Let's go ahead and read the first time. Nikki is hiking on a trail at a national park. The trail begins at an elevation of 250 feet above sea level. Every hour that Nikki hikes, she gains 125 feet in elevation. Write an equation that represents Nikki's elevation, y, in feet, after she has hiked x hours. Then graph the equation. Let's read it a second time, making sure that we underline important words and box numbers. Nikki is hiking on a trail at a national park. The trail begins at an elevation of 250 feet above sea level. Every hour Nikki hikes, she gains 125 feet in elevation. Write an equation that represents the elevation y in feet after she has hiked x hours. Then graph the equation. So let's go ahead and get into it. We have to start thinking about this in broken down parts. Now, I'm going to write some information down here and then show how we could go back to a question and just identify those components. So first, Nikki gains, well, how much does she gain? She gains blank feet in elevation every hour. So I'm going to look for where I see that. Oh, she gains 125 feet in elevation. And then it says every hour. So I know this is 125 feet in elevation. After X hours, the total gain in elevation is blank feet. Well, I actually don't know what that is, but I know that we're talking about her elevation after she's hiked for a certain number of hours. So this must be Y feet. We don't know what that value is yet. So we look at this. Nikki's elevation, well, we just said Nikki's elevation was being represented by Y. So we're going to put a Y in that box. Then is reminds us that we're talking about equal. So Nikki's elevation is the initial elevation. So where she started or where she began. So she begins at an elevation of 250 feet. And if yours goes outside of the box, that's all right. Plus her initial plus tells us that we're adding her gain in elevation. Well, her gain in elevation is going to be, how much does she gain every hour? Well, she gains 125 feet. So now we have the equation that y equals 250 plus 125, but it's not 125 by itself, it's 125 for each hour. So I'm going to put an x here, so we are multiplying that. So now that means my equation is y equals 250 plus 125x, where 250 is my b, 125 is my m. So when I go back here to my question, I can then look and see, well, the trail begins. That should have been a clue right here that this section of information was going to be talking about my b or my y-intercept, my y-crossing. So then I look around and I see that she gains 120 feet every hour, tells me that we're multiplying. So this is telling me that I'm going to multiply. And it's happening 125 feet per hour. So that tells me that here I'm actually going to be looking at my slope. My m is 125. And then finally I see my y and my x. So now that I have that together, I can simply substitute some numbers 1, 2, 3. So 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. And now I can multiply to find my answer. So 250 plus 125 times 1 is going to be 375. 150 plus 250 times 2, well, 125 times 2 is really just 250, so 250 and 250 is 500. And then I look and I see it's 250 plus 125 times 3. 125 times 3 is 375 plus 250, which is going to give me 625. So now I can go ahead and put it inside of my table. 375 feet high for 1 hour, 500 feet high for 2 hours, and 625 feet high for 3 hours. I can then create ordered pairs here, where 1 and 375, 2 and 500, 3 and 625. So now, when I go down, I'm going to skip this part right here. When I go down, I can see that I'm going to graph the ordered pair that I just made, that I found because I used the equation that I created from the initial story. So let's go ahead and graph these points. So I'm starting, that's right, I have to go all the way back up to the top and realize that I'm starting at 250 feet above sea level. So I'm already starting x at 0, and my starting point, 250, is my y, or my b. So now I can then do the rest. So 1 hour is 375. I'm going to have to estimate where that is. 2 hours is 500. That's easy for me to see right here. And then 3 hours is at 625. Again, I'm going to have to estimate a little bit there. And finally, it wants me to draw a straight line through to connect all of these dots. I'm not trying to make the lines fit. If I've plotted my points correctly, they should create a perfect linear straight line.